What if I told you that in the 1960s, an Israeli spy infiltrated the Syrian government so deeply that he nearly became the country's defense minister? He had access to Syria's most guarded military secrets, socialized with top generals, and even toured fortified positions on the Golan Heights. His intelligence changed the course of Middle Eastern history. His name was Eli Cohen, and this is the story of the greatest spy operation in Mossad's history. Eli Cohen was born in Alexandria, Egypt, in 1924 to a Syrian Jewish family. He spoke fluent Arabic and understood Arab culture intimately. In the early 1950s, he joined Zionist underground movements in Egypt, helping Jewish families emigrate to Israel. But after a failed Israeli intelligence operation exposed several agents in 1954, Cohen became a target. In 1956, he fled to Israel. Once in Israel, Cohen tried repeatedly to join the Mossad but was rejected. So he settled into civilian life, working as an accountant, marrying an Iraqi Jewish woman named Nadia, and starting a family. For several years, his espionage ambitions seemed over. But by the early 1960s, Israel faced a growing threat. Syria was fortifying positions on the Golan Heights, regularly shelling Israeli settlements below. Israeli military planners desperately needed intelligence about Syrian capabilities. In 1960, the Mossad reconsidered Eli Cohen. His background made him ideal for an audacious plan: create a completely fabricated identity and insert him into Syrian high society. The Mossad created an entirely new identity. He would become Kamel Amin the Bet, a wealthy Syrian businessman who had been living in Argentina. The cover story was elaborate. Born in Beirut, moved to Argentina as a young man, built a successful import-export business, and now wanted to return home and contribute to Arab nationalism. Cohen spent months in intensive training, studying Syrian politics, memorizing Damascus streets, and perfecting his cover story. The Mossad sent him to Argentina first to establish his false identity, creating business records and social connections that would withstand scrutiny. In early 1962, Kamel Amin the Bet arrived in Buenos Aires and began frequenting Syrian expatriate circles. He threw lavish parties, donated to Syrian causes, and carefully cultivated relationships with Syrian diplomats. After several months building credibility, he announced his move to Syria. In January 1962, Kamel the Bet arrived in Damascus. He rented a luxury apartment near Syrian military and government officials and began throwing frequent parties, serving expensive whiskey and creating an atmosphere where officers felt comfortable talking freely. And they did. Cohen's apartment became a gathering place for Syria's most important figures. He befriended Colonel Amin al-Hafez, who later became Syria's president. He socialized with senior military officers, government ministers, and Ba'ath party leaders. Within months, he was being invited to government functions and private gatherings where Syria's elite discussed sensitive matters. But Cohen wasn't just listening at parties. He systematically gathered intelligence and transmitted it to Israel using a sophisticated radio hidden in his apartment. The intelligence he provided was extraordinary. He reported on Syrian military deployments along the Golan Heights, including exact locations of artillery positions, bunkers, and fortifications. He identified which military units were stationed where. He provided early warning about Syria's plans to divert water sources and acquire Soviet weaponry. One of Cohen's most valuable contributions came from an almost unbelievable opportunity. His connections were so strong that Syrian officers invited him to tour their defensive positions on the Golan Heights. They proudly showed him bunkers, artillery positions, and strategic installations, explaining their defensive strategy and potential offensive plans. Cohen took mental notes of everything. But he also made a suggestion that would prove devastating to Syria. Noticing that soldiers in the exposed positions had little shade, he suggested planting trees next to each fortified position. The Syrians loved the idea and implemented it. When Israeli forces attacked during the Six-Day War in 1967, those trees served as perfect markers, identifying every Syrian position from the air. By 1964, Cohen's infiltration had reached astonishing heights. He was being considered for high-level government positions, with reports suggesting discussions about him becoming Deputy Defense Minister. He had complete access to Syria's most sensitive military planning and enjoyed total trust from Syria's leadership. But operating under deep cover for so long carried enormous risks. In January 1965, Syrian military intelligence, with Soviet assistance, began using advanced radio detection equipment to search for clandestine transmissions. They had grown suspicious about how Israel was receiving remarkably accurate intelligence. Cohen had been transmitting for nearly 3 years. On January 18, 1965, Syrian counterintelligence triangulated suspicious transmissions to a Damascus neighborhood. On January 24, 1965, Syrian security forces raided Cohen's apartment while he was transmitting. He was caught red-handed. His cover was completely blown. The arrest sent shockwaves through the Syrian government. The man who had dined with their president and toured their military installations was an Israeli spy. Syrian counterintelligence realized that virtually every major military secret from the previous 3 years had been compromised. Cohen was subjected to intense interrogation and torture, but revealed as little as possible. Israel launched desperate efforts to save him through prisoner exchanges and international appeals, even involving the Pope. But Syria was determined to make an example of him. On May 18, 1965, just 4 months after his arrest, Eli Cohen was hanged in Marj Square in Damascus before thousands of spectators. Syrian television broadcast the execution. Cohen faced death with remarkable courage. His last request was to write a letter to his wife, asking her forgiveness for the secrets he had kept. Just 2 years later, in June 1967, the Six-Day War broke out. Israeli forces attacked Syrian positions on the Golan Heights with stunning precision. They knew exactly where every bunker and fortification was located. The trees Cohen suggested planting served as perfect markers. Syrian defenses fell in less than 2 days. Military historians credit the operation's success largely to Cohen's intelligence. His reports gave Israeli commanders a complete picture of Syrian defenses, allowing extraordinary accuracy in their attack. The Golan Heights, used for years to shell Israeli communities, fell to Israeli control. Cohen's body was never returned despite repeated requests. His widow Nadia spent her life advocating for his remains, never remarrying and raising their 3 children alone. Syria's refusal was both practical and symbolic, a final assertion of control over the man who humiliated their intelligence apparatus. The Eli Cohen operation remains one of the most studied cases in intelligence history. It demonstrates the power of deep cover operations and the value of human intelligence. Intelligence agencies worldwide analyze his methods, how he built trust, gathered information without suspicion, and maintained cover under pressure. Cohen's story also reveals the human cost of espionage. He chose duty over family, living years under false identity, constantly performing, never truly himself. The psychological toll is almost unimaginable. And ultimately, he paid with his life. To this day, Syria rarely discusses the case publicly. But their quick execution, refusal of all appeals, and continued refusal to return his remains more than half a century later speaks to how deeply his operation wounded Syrian pride and security. Eli Cohen operated before digital communications and satellite surveillance. He relied on personal relationships and human intuition. In many ways, his operation represents the pinnacle of traditional human intelligence work. If you want more deep investigations into intelligence operations and covert missions that shaped our world, subscribe and turn on notifications. Drop a comment with what operation you want us to investigate next. And if this story fascinated you, share it with anyone interested in real espionage history. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next investigation.